His name we pray, Amen.
Amen, amen.
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 Okay, so now I will give the floor to Attorney Tori Mocha. God bless, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm trying
Yes,
to
sir,
fix
yes, sir.
the camera because I'm turning it on, but it won't go through.
Most especially to our professor, Dr. Paul
Number 5. It is one which makes criminal an act done before the passage of the law, and which was innocent when done, and punishes such an act. A. Ex post facto law. B. Bill of attainder. C. Criminal law. D. Revised penal code. Number 6. It is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without trial. A. Ex post facto law. B. Bill of attainder. C. Criminal law. D. Revised penal code. Number 7. When a new law is passed which carries a stiffer penalty, it should be applied A. Prospectively, or B. Retroactively. Number 8. When a new law is passed which is beneficial to the accused, should it be applied prospectively or B. Retroactively? Number 9. What does nullum crimen nulla pena sine lege stand for? A. An act done against my will is not my act. B. There is no crime when there is no law punishing it. C. Falsity in one is falsity in all. And D. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. Number 10. What does ignorantia legis non excusat stand for? A. An act done against my will is not my act. B. There is no crime when there is no law punishing it. C. Falsity in one is falsity in all. And D. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. (11) Error in personae is also known as A. Mistake in the identity, B. Mistake in the blow, C. Mistake of fact, and D. Reckless imprudence. 12. Aberratio ictus is also known as A. Mistake in the identity, B. Mistake in the blow, C. Mistake of fact, and D. Reckless imprudence. Number 13. Juan intended to rape Maria. While he was raping Maria, it was unknown to him that Maria already died hours ago due to heart attack. What crime was committed if there was any? A. Rape, B. Acts of lasciviousness, C. Impossible crime of rape, D. Attempted rape. Number 14. Select the two means of committing a felony. A. Intelligence, B. Dolo, C. Intent, D. Culpa.
Lapod. Uy! Maria po, sanina. Maria, sanina. No!
Uy, Kamaria, hanggang sanina ko. Uy!
Ayun eh, napalain.
Dili, ni short. Kane. Catch.
Ay lain eh.
O yung diaper.
Ayun na. Eh, butasan na dito, babe. Butasan. Dati na, dati.
Hindi sa inday ini patulog pa siya.
Ayun na, na. Diaper, diaper.
Diaper, 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 bim, bim. Diaper, to, 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 to. To, to. To, 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 to.
Eko, sanina niya. Sanina niya.
Yeah, yeah,
Ang kada.
I know. I get it.
Uno na, dati na. Grabe, wala mo kaya sanina dira.
Oh, that look cute, Selena.
Oh, no,
Oh, and my
look
Selena
great.
is there.
No, lamok ka, bay. Yung my God.
on na akong camera, sir, pero wala. Dili makita mo, sir.
Okay, let's start. So our subject for review today is Criminal Law 1 that covers Book 1 of the Revised Penal Code, and it covers the provisions from Article 1 up to Article 113. So I believe you were already able to read Article 1 up to Article 113 during your class. Did you read?
Not so, sir.
Okay, not so. Were you already given with your review materials for this subject?
Pag-upload na akong sir, material.
Wala pa mo natagaan?
Hapon, sir.
Wala pa, sir.
Okay. Sige, anyway, the Revised Penal Code class is a code, it's a book containing several provisions on crimes punishable under the law. Okay? So the first part of the Revised Penal Code, or what we call as Book 1, provides for the theories about criminal law. While in Book 2, starting with Article 114, it provides for all the crimes punishable under the law. So Book 2 is classified into different titles, and each title has its own set of crimes that are punishable under the law. Okay. Now, the Revised Penal Code was enacted or became a law on January 1, 1932. That's in Article 1. Okay? It took effect on January 1, 1932. Now, the Revised Penal Code is under the criminal law. So remember, our legal system in the Philippines provides for different laws. If you talk about crimes related to taxation, so we have taxation law. If you are talking about crimes, if you are talking about cases relative to civil acts, mga civil cases, then we have civil law for that. If you talk about cases involving business, merchandise, we have commercial law or mercantile law. For crimes, we also have criminal law. For labor, we have labor law. Okay? So for our subject today, we focus on one law, and that is criminal law. And if you talk about the book or the code that contains the different crimes punishable under the law and the theories of criminal law, then we have the so-called Revised Penal Code. Now, what is criminal law? Okay? Criminal law is the branch or division of law which defines crimes, treats of their nature, and provides for their punishment. Now, there are three things that you need to remember when you define criminal law. Defines crimes, that's the first. Defines crimes. The second is treats of their nature. And the third is provides for their punishment. Nakuha ninyo? Defines the crimes, treats their nature, and provides for their punishment. When you say defines the crimes, we have to find out what crime or what specific crime was committed. Okay? If the crime that was committed is parricide, then we have to define what is parricide. Okay? So, usa man ang parricide. Intentional killing of a person whom you have relationship. It could be your spouse, it could be your ascendants, it could be your descendants, it could be your parents or your children. So that's how are we going to define. And criminal law, particularly under Book 2 of the Revised Penal Code, defines all the crimes punishable under the law. Second is treating their nature. What's the nature of the crime? Is it a crime against person? Is it a crime against property? Is it a crime against honor? Is it a crime against liberty? Okay, so we categorize each crime, and each crime also provides, or the code also provides for the respective penalties for each offense. Right. And the third is provides for the punishment. So what is the punishment if you commit a crime of parricide? If you commit a crime of murder? If you commit a crime of kidnapping and serious legal detention? Then the code provides for the penalty. So as future policemen or law enforcement agency, you have to know the penalties provided for each offense. Okay? So that is the definition of criminal law. Okay, what's that again? What are the three things that we need to remember if we talk about the definition of criminal law? Number one,
Define crimes.
what's the first? Defines the crime. Okay, number two, okay, it treats the nature. And number three is provides for the punishment. Okay. Now let's proceed to the next word. That is crimes. So what is a crime, or what are crimes? For crimes, we need to remember two things also. Omission and commission. Okay? So we have commission, C-O-M-M-I-S-S-I-O-N, and we have the second one, omission. Omission and omission. Okay. Now, what is commission? What is commission in relation to criminal law? Anyone? Commit.
The act was commit.
Commit. So when you talk about commission, imong gibuhat, there is an action that resulted to the commission of the offense. Like if we talk about murder, what act was committed? That's killing. Okay? When you stab the person, when you shoot the person, when you hack the person, that is an example of commission. When you say omission, you did not do anything. So there is a crime, or there are crimes, okay, that punish or punishes a person for not doing anything. So you might say, why is it that I am liable under the law when in fact I did not do anything? So take note of that. There are actions or omissions, even if you did not do anything, you would still be liable. So take note of that. Crimes include commission and omission. And this commission and omission are punishable by the law. Not all acts that a person commits is considered a crime, or not all omissions are considered a crime. Only those commissions and omissions that are punishable by the law, specifically the law provides for its punishment, would be considered as a crime or felony. Okay? Now, what are examples of omission? Like say for example, you were in an uninhabited place. Like unsa man ang uninhabited place? You are in a place where there are few people, there are few houses, or seldom you could see a person passing by, or the distance of the houses are very, very far from each other, and somebody along the road is in danger of dying. Kalamat yun. Maybe gipaak og halas, or maybe gipusil, and then magmalatay. And here comes, you are in that area. You could have saved his life, but you did not do anything to save the person's life. In fact, you ran away. So, ka nga, nidalagan ko because I might be accused of the one who did the act. That's wrong. Okay? If you are in an uninhabited place, nga wala kay mga tao, like nasa bukid, nasa kalasangan, you are obligated under the law to help the person. Because if you fail to render help, then you would be liable for what? Abandonment of person in danger of dying. That is a crime. That is an example of an omission. Do you understand? So if we talk about crimes, always remember that it includes both acts committed and acts omitted. Commission and omission. Okay. Then we need to understand also two things. We have ex post facto law. It came out during the pre-test exam, and the bill of attainder. Now, what do you mean by ex post facto law? An ex post facto law is a law that punishes an act before, which during that time, there was no law punishing it. And now, gi-appeal ka karon nga gipanisyan for an act committed previously. Okay? So, it makes criminal an act done before the passage of the law, which was innocent when done, and punishes such an act. Okay, I'll give you an example. Is urinating in the public a crime? Mangihi tas kalsada, crime dili?
No, sir.
It's
No,
not
sir.
a crime. Okay, a crime. You were identified today for urinating outside. Okay? 1 month after, a new law was passed punishing all acts of urinating in public places as a crime. Since you were identified today as the one who urinated, giakusahan ka a month after when a new law was passed punishing punishing the act of urinating as a crime. Is that correct? Pwede
No,
ba
sir.
kang
No,
mapanisyan
sir.
for urinating in public places which at the time you committed the act, it was innocently done because you did not know that there was a law punishing it, or you are aware that there was no law punishing it, that's why you did it, and then such act was made criminal because of the passage of the new law. So, let me go back to my question. Is that correct? Will you be held liable for
No, sir.
committing a crime? Okay.
No, sir.
That is an example of an ex post facto law. Ex post facto law is an illegal law. Okay? Our laws frown upon ex post facto law or ex post facto laws because our law here is applied prospectively. What do you mean by prospectively? Only those who commit the act at the time of the passage of the law or at the time the law becomes effective will be held liable. So say for example, if nangihi ka karon, what time is it? It's 9:15 in the morning. Nangihi ka karon. And then the new law becomes effective 10 o'clock in the morning. So at the time you urinated at 9:15, there was no crime yet. Correct? But if you urinate in a public place by 10 o'clock at the time the law becomes effective, then you would be held liable. And all other persons who urinate in public places after the effectivity of the law would be liable. And since it's a crime, then you would be criminally liable. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Muna gitawag na to
Sir,
prospective, ha? By the way, I haven't discussed the pre-test exam. Okay? But in the course of our discussion now, I'll be discussing some questions and then we will be if we still have time later on, I'll give another exam, and I hope that your scores will be improved if after that. Okay? All right. So, criminal laws are applied prospectively, meaning it should be applied from the time the law becomes effective and thereafter until it is annulled, repealed, or amended. If it's not repealed, if it's not amended, the law continues to be valid. Okay? And we are ought to respect, obey, and follow the law. Even if the law is very harsh, but we have to remember that it is a law. Okay? So, let's go back to ex post facto law. Why is it illegal to hold you criminally liable even if you were urinating in a public place prior to the passage of the law? Very simple. Under the Latin maxim, nullum crimen, nulla poena sine lege, there is no crime when there is no law punishing it. Nasabtan ninyo? That's why you have to look. If you commit an act now, you check, is there a law punishing it? If the answer is yes, then you would be criminally liable. But if the answer is no, then you will not be held criminally liable. Even if the act you committed is very, very grave, very, very heinous. But if there is no law punishing it, then you will not be held liable. You look at the case of Hayden Ko and Dr. Vicky Bello. You're familiar with their scandal with Katrina Halili, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Napriso ba sila? Napriso ba sila for recording sexual activities, uploading in the internet, etc., etc., were they held criminally liable? Were they sent to jail? No. Why? Because there was no crime punishing. Yeah, there was no law punishing it during the time of commission. But since there was already a law after that, kanang Anti-Voyeurism Act, upon the effectivity of that Anti-Voyeurism Act, tanang mga tao nga ni record, ni upload, ni share, nagpakalat sa mga scandal, mga videos without the consent of the parties, then you will now be held criminally liable for violating the Anti-Voyeurism Act. Nasabtan na to? That is what we call prospective application of criminal law. Okay? And only if there is a law punishing an act, make the act a crime and would make the person criminally liable. Basta walay balaod nga nagpunish, then you have to know that there is no crime committed. No matter how harsh, how serious the offense is, as long as there is no crime committed, as long as there is no law punishing such act, then there is no crime to speak of. Next is Bill of Attainder. What is Bill of Attainder? Bill of Attainder is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without judicial trial. Panishan ka for committing an act without trial, without judicial trial. What happens there? If walay trial sa korte, panishan ra ka for committing an act, you will be sent to jail and you will be asked to serve sentence for 20 years, 40 years, inana. Okay ra ba na? Without letting you present your side, without presenting your evidence to prove your innocence? Is that okay with you?
No, sir.
No. Okay, so Bill of Attainder is an illegal law. Okay? So there are two laws that are illegal. Ex post facto law and Bill of Attainder. So under the Constitution of the Philippines, the Constitution guarantees the innocence of the people accused of committing a crime. So if you committed an offense, dili ka sad-an dayon. Even if you committed the act in the presence of the law enforcement officer. Kana mga in flagranto in flagrante delicto nga mga cases, di ba? Caught in the act. Even if you were caught in the act, it doesn't mean, or no person, or no group, or no organization, or entity has the right and power to declare you guilty beyond reasonable doubt without any judicial trial. That's why we have court proceedings, we have court trial, because it is only after that the court is convinced, after the presentation of evidence, and after the arguments of both parties, wherein the court will evaluate documentary evidences, testimonial evidences, and other means of proving the innocence or guilt of the person, will the court renders its judgment. If the court is convinced that the accused is guilty beyond reasonable doubt, then the court will have to convict the accused. But if the court is not convinced as to his guilt, then the court will have to acquit the accused for failure to prove the guilt of the accused beyond reasonable doubt. Do you follow? Okay, very good. So that's it. Now, criminal law is governed by three theories. Only two. And okay, we have classical theory and the positivist theory. So what is a classical theory? Okay. Under the classical theory, the basis of criminal liability is human free will, and the purpose of the penalty is retribution. So kana ko nung pag-commit sa krimen, that's free will ko, no? And ang penalty is balus. Because you committed the crime, it's proper that you would also suffer a consequence or suffer consequences. According to the positivist theory, the crime is essentially a social and natural phenomenon, and as such, it cannot be treated and checked by the application of abstract principles of law and jurisprudence, nor by the imposition of a punishment fixed and determined. Okay. Then, another theory is included, ang pang-third. We have the eclectic. So there are three theories: classical theory, positivist theory, and eclectic theory. Ang eclectic is a combination of good features of classical and positivist. Okay. Now, there are three principles that govern criminal law. We have territorial, general, and prospective. So I already discussed prospective a while ago. So the application of the criminal law is always prospective, meaning it is only applicable at the time of its effectivity up to the time it is amended or repealed. No matter how harsh the law is, basta walay amendment, walay repeal, then you have to follow the law. And as law enforcement officer, you have the obligation to enforce the law. Do you understand? That's perspective. Pero class, there are times class nga ang mga bagong balaod is beneficial to the accused. Okay? There are new laws also that are not beneficial to the accused. Mga stiffer penalties. Say for example, ang karon nga drugs na penalty is maximum ta og reclusion, life imprisonment. Okay? That's the maximum. Now, if a person is accused of committing an act in violation of Republic Act 9165, so ang mahitabo, ato dyan i-enforce ang law. Okay? Now, what if a month after a new law was enacted, nga pwede na ta maka-plea bargain, pwede na maka-lower, let's go na lang. What if after a month, gilower ang maximum penalty sa drugs from life imprisonment to prison mayor. What's prison mayor? What's the period covered? Prison mayor. Bebe, let me call in, be. Mr. Credo. Emilio.
Yes, sir.
Oh, ano man prison mayor? What's the period of imprisonment?
No idea, sir.
Board exam, right? No idea. Anyone?
1 day to 3 years.
5,
6?
6 months. 6 months in 1 day to 6 years, sir.
6 years and 1 day, sir.
2? Yes, Miss Palmares.
6 years and 1 day to 12 years, sir.
Very good. That's prison mayor. You have to remember that. The penalty is very important. So let's start with arresto minor. Pinakamubo. That's 1 day to 30 days imprisonment. Arresto mayor, 1 month and 1 day to 1 year. 1 month and 1 day to 6 months imprisonment. Then we have prison correctional, 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. Prison mayor is 6 years and 1 day to 12 years. Reclusion temporal is 12 years and 1 day to 20 years. And reclusion perpetua is 20 years and 1 day to 40 years. Okay? So from life imprisonment, imagine na ang life imprisonment is even more than reclusion perpetua because that's life imprisonment. Forever. Okay? Kung reclusion perpetua, na kay chance because after 40 years, pwede ka makagawas. So yun, anak ka, dako ang life imprisonment. So, what if a month after a new law was passed lowering the penalty of drug cases? From life imprisonment to prison mayor, imagine na. So what happens to all those who have been arrested prior to the effectivity of the law? Will they enjoy? Will they benefit from the new law? The answer is yes. Okay? If the accused would benefit from the new law, then that is the time that we will apply the new law retroactively. It will be applied to all those who committed the offense prior to the effectivity of the law. So, pag imagine ha, ang imong sentensya is life imprisonment, nya pag-abot sa new law, gilower og 6 months and 6 years and 1 day, unya karong adlaw pagka-effective sa balaod, ang imong na-serve nga sentence is 6 years na ka. Kulang lang 1 day, ugma, pwede na ka makagawas. It will be applied to you immediately because the new law is favorable to the accused. Do you understand? Okay?
Yes, sir.
That's the only time that the law is applied retroactively. Okay, let's change the facts of that story. What if, okay, kung lang ta, kasi mga common karon, mga swertres. Example, swertres, di ba? Ang penalty is 1 day to 30 days imprisonment. Arresto minor. What if a new law was passed, gihimo nag reclusion perpetua ang penalty for sa mga illegal gambling? What if nadakpan ka karon? And then the following day, a new law was passed increasing the penalty of anti-gambling or illegal gambling. Will you be affected by the increase in the penalty? Yes or no?
No, sir.
Yeah, no. Katong mga na-accused, katong mga nadakpan prior to the effectivity of the new law will enjoy the 1 month imprisonment should they be convicted. Okay? Pero those who have been arrested upon the effectivity of the new law, which increases the penalty of the illegal gambling, will suffer the consequences, will be covered under the provision of the new law. So, ang maximum penalty nila is life reclusion perpetua. Do you understand? Okay? So, if the new law is favorable or beneficial to the accused, we will apply it retroactively. But if the new law is not favorable or not beneficial to the accused, then we have to apply it prospectively. Only those who committed the offense at the time of the effectivity of the new law. Okay? So that is it. Then we have territorial. Okay? That's the second principle of criminal law. The first one is prospective. The second one is territorial. What do you mean by territorial or territoriality? The crime committed within the Philippine territory will be subjected to the Philippine law. Nasabtan? Only those acts, only those commissions and omissions that were performed within the Philippine territory will be subjected to our criminal law. So, nakapatay ka sa Saudi Arabia, Philippine law will not be governed. You will not be held liable under the Philippine law, but you will be liable under the law of Saudi Arabia. Okay? Muna gitawag na tog territoriality. Even if the parties are not Filipinos. Say for example, an American and Australian nagdunggabanay inside a beer house in Dumaguete City. So clearly, Philippine law will be applied to them. Even if they are not Filipino citizens. Because they are within the Philippine territory. So anybody, regardless of citizenship, who are within the Philippine territory and they committed the act will be liable under the Philippine law. Muna siya gitawag og generality or general. That's the third principle. Nasabtan? So ang third principle is general, meaning Philippine law is applied to all, regardless of citizenship, regardless of religion, regardless of country of origin. As long as you are within the Philippine territory, that's the second principle, territoriality, then Philippine law, or particularly the criminal law, will be applied to them. Okay. Now, question. What is the coverage of the Philippine territory?
Sir, repeat again, sir.
Huh? What is the coverage of Philippine territory? Asaman, there is a Dumaguete, that's Philippine territory, correct? Because Dumaguete is part of the Philippines. In Batanes, pwede? Philippine
Yes, sir.
territory.
Yes, sir.
Sulu,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
okay. Spratly Island,
Yes, sir.
oh. So kana kay di ba dagamang kailog ana no? So wala pa kayo tay kuan gyud. As far as we are concerned, we claim that as Philippine territory. So pwede. Okay ra og Filipino citizens ang mag-commit og crime dito kay wala problema, but what if it involves other nationalities? And other countries are also claiming the that area as their territory. So that is a problem. So anyway, what about Philippine embassy in Thailand? inside the Philippine Embassy of Thailand. Is that Philippine territory or
Sir, yes, sir.
Thailand
Yes, sir.
territory?
Philippine territory, sir.
Okay. Gawas sa Philippine Embassy, paggawas sa gate. 1 meter
Dili na, sir.
outside the gate of the Philippine Embassy. Is it
Dili
Philippine
na, sir.
territory or Thailand territory?
Thailand territory na, sir.
Philippine sir.
Okay. Kanara yung kutob ragyod sa Philippine Embassy. More na atuon. Outside that is no longer Philippine Embassy. It's no longer Philippine territory. Okay? So, at least you know that if the crime is committed within the Philippine Embassy in another country, it is considered an extension of the Philippine territory. So, Philippine law gyapon is applicable. Now, what about on board a Philippine Airlines? Nga ga-travel ang Philippine Airlines karon. Ang Philippine Airlines is above India, example. It's above India and then the crime was committed inside the plane niya above India siya. Is that Philippine territory or Indian territory?
India na, sir.
India. Who says it's Philippine territory? Okay, Philippine territory po na siya, ha? Basta on board Philippine vessel and Philippine aircraft. Philippine vessels and Philippine aircraft, wherever they are considered extensions of the Philippine territory. Provided provided that that aircraft or vessel is registered under the Philippine law. Even if it carries the Philippine flag, but it is registered in another country, then that is not considered as an extension to the Philippine territory. Only those vessels, mga barko, and aircraft registered under the Philippines, even if it carries a different flag. Like, it carries an American flag, but registered in the Philippines. Is that a Philippine aircraft? Or no?
No, sir.
Okay, it is a Philippine aircraft because it's registered in the Philippines. So, ayaw mo kauwat anang flag it carries. You look into the place or the country where the aircraft or vessel was registered. Nasabtan?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, if example, Philippine Airlines, it carries a Philippine flag, but it was registered in Morocco, then it is not a Philippine aircraft. So if the crime was committed anang Philippine Airlines nga registered in Morocco, Philippine law will not be applied to the parties. But it would be Morocco. Nasabtan? But if it carries a Morocco flag but registered in the Philippines, then clearly, wherever that aircraft is, it is considered an extension to the Philippine territory. Okay.
Sir, muna gitawag sir na kwan sir, aning extension of territorial.
Extension of territoriality. If we talk about class pod ha kanang mga crimes involving forgery of money, kanang magama-gama gaitag fake nga Philippine currency. Okay, wherever you are, bisan pa kag dili ka Pinoy, like you are you are a Canadian and you are in New Zealand karon, nagama kag mga fake na kwarta, liable gyapon ka under the Philippine law even if you are not within the Philippine territory. Basta we talk about forging of Philippine currency is an exception to the territoriality rule. Or if you committed mga crimes against national security and the law of nation, like kanang mga treason, wherever you are, bahala pa nagwala ka sa Philippine territory, you would be liable under the Philippine law. Nasabtan? General rule? Okay, general rule. The crime must be committed within the Philippine territory nga atong hibalan. Kanang makita sa Philippine flag. Philippine flag, Philippine map. Kanang makita sa mapa, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Muna itong hibalaan nga territory, di ba? Okay. All crimes committed therein would be under the Philippine law. Then natin mga exception, kanang mga Philippine embassy, mga airplanes and vessels registered in the Philippines. Wherever they are considered as an extension to the Philippine territory. So liable yapon ang mga tao under the Philippine law. Then we have the forging of currency and committing the crimes of national security and the law of nation, mga piracy, mga violation of neutrality, treason. So these are crimes against national security and the law of nation. So wherever you are, liable ka under the Philippine law. Nasabtan?
Sir.
Yes. Now, let's proceed to chapter 1. We have felonies. Felony is defined under Article 4. So what is a felony? It is an act or omission punishable by the law. And felony may be committed through dolo or culpa. Nigawas sa atong exam. Felony is a crime. Felony refers to an act or omission punishable by the law. And there are two ways of committing a felony. By dolo, meaning deceit, pagpangwat, pagpangilad, when there is evil intention. Or culpa, when there is negligence, when there is carelessness. So say for example, if I'm going to kill somebody, that is an example of culpa. Dolo. Okay? Dolo, because there is criminal, evil intention to commit a crime. That's dolo. Dolo or deceit. But when we talk about deceit, do not limit yourselves with understanding of pagpangwat o pagpangilad. Because under the law, deceit as dolo covers more than pagpanguwat o pagpangilad. Because it includes also all other acts ng mga evil in nature. Okay. So, culpa. Kanang mga reckless imprudence resulting to homicide, mga pagdinangag, you committed a crime as a result of negligence. So there was no criminal intention, wala na intention, di ba, to commit a crime. It's just that nadisgrasya ka as a result of carelessness. Nganumang carelessness, nganumang negligence. Number one, you were driving without a valid driver's license. So, dili ka authorized to drive. Nag-drive ka. So, dinangag na. Dili registered imong sakinan. Gapakusog ka. Okay? So, kung mapakusog ka, that is a clear an act of negligence. Or, wala ni mo gi-check ang brake. Wala ni mo gi-check ang mga oil. Wala ni mo gi-check ang sakinan mismo, ang manubila. So, carelessness. And if there is no carelessness, there is no negligence, it's a pure accident ra gyud. So walay sala, walay crime. It's a pure accident. It's purely accidental. Pero kung naay pagdinangag, okay, di na siya aksidente, although we call it as an accident, but if you go deeper, if you go in detail, naagud siya sala. So krimen siya. Okay? So, if the act resulted to a felony by reason of negligence, it's culpa. But if there is evil intention, it's dolo. So if you compare dolo and culpa, mas taas og penalty ang dolo kaysa culpa. Like say for example, nakapatay ka as a result of careless driving. Yung penalty is only prison correctional, that's probationable. 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. But if you kill the person intentionally, that's reclusion perpetua. Okay? So, ang murder, that is evil in nature. That's dolo. But ang Killing somebody as a result of carelessness, that's only culpa. There was no evil intention to kill the person. It's just that naligsan ra gud nimo siya. Okay, wala kay tulog, wala nimo gi-check imong sakyanan, ana. But even if the penalties are different, still both acts are felonies. Liable gyapon ka for the commission of a felony. Okay. Then we also have mistake of fact. Unsa man ang mistake of fact? You believed that something is true. And if it is indeed true, you are justified from your actuation. Like, say for example, class, dunggabon ka. Kita kang dunggabon ka. What will you do?
Defend yourself, sir.
Okay, pwede ka mo defend, no? Nakay yung pusilon. Like, padulong na siya, yung pusilon. Okay? Now, what if he was just playing a joke? You were not aware that he was just playing a joke, di ay? Yeah, may man untag, may joke niya. What if dili to joke? So, is your actuation justified for defending yourself? And as a result of defending yourself, imo siyang napatay? That is a justifying circumstance. That's a justifiable act. Okay? But you have to take note also of kanang reasonableness of the means that you employed in protecting yourself. Because if your act is not justified, then liable ka sa pagpatay niya. Like self-defense will not be appreciated. Do you follow? Dili tanang pagdepensa sa imong kaugalingon matawag na to justifying circumstance. And in justifying circumstances, there is no criminal liability, there is no civil liability also. Take note of that, okay? Walay criminal, walay civil, basta justifying circumstance. Pero dili tanang nga pag-defend sa kaugalingon justifying circumstance. Kaya gisingitan katong tawo nga dunggabon tikaw, meaning you could still run away. Di ba? Nakihambugero ma, kaya nakipusil, imo siyang gipusil. Bisag layo ra mo. Is that considered justifying? Is that considered self-defense? It's not anymore. So take note of the weapons you used. Take note of the circumstances surrounding the situation. Kinahanglang ma-justify nimo nga you are in the imminent danger of being killed. Kinahanglang ang imong safety and security delikado. At anytime pwede kang mapatay. At 1 second or 2 seconds you could have died. Muna gitawag natong imminence in dying, or there is an imminent danger in dying. So if you cannot justify that in court, na ni-claim ka og self-defense, dili na ma-appreciate sa court, liable ka. Okay? So muna ito mistake of fact. You believe in something that is true, even if it's not true. And your actuations are justified, or it falls within the allowable acts should the act you believed in is actually true. And you should not be faulted for it being false, because you are in a situation wherein you could not think anymore whether it's true, it's a joke, or it's really a reality. Gatinud-anay na tong tao nga dunggabon ka. So kung ano na siya kanang you cannot think anymore, you cannot evaluate anymore whether it's true or not. As long as your act is justified, sala na nas tao nga nung joke siya. Okay? So mistake of fact is actually a justifying circumstance. And as justifying circumstance, there is no criminal and there is no civil. Take note of that. Among all the circumstances in the revised penal code, only justifying circumstance does not give any criminal liability and civil liability to the accused. Now, what are the elements of dolo? Okay? Elements of dolo. Kinalang na ay intention, because if there is no intention, it's not a crime. Number 2, there should be freedom. Meaning, it's your own free will to do the act, to commit the offense. Because if somebody threatens you to do an act like, inan ka nga, patya siya, because if you will not kill him, I will kill you. So that's why you killed the person out of fear. Alright? So, an act done against your will is not your act. So what happens now? It is not considered a felony anymore. It's considered dolo because there is no freedom. But if there is freedom because you acted it as a result of your own will and voluntariness, then you will be liable for the dolo. And third is intelligence. Okay? Intelligence. Dapat you acted with the right mind. Dili intelligence nga magna cum laude or kinahanglang doctor ka para matawag na to intelligent ka. Dili. As long as you know what's right and what's wrong, then that is the kind of intelligence that we are looking for. So katong mga tao nga mga buang are believed to have no intelligence. And if they committed a crime, they will not be liable. It's considered exempting circumstance. And in exempting circumstance, there is no criminal liability, but there is civil liability. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So later on, we will discuss the different circumstances, but at least now you know na ang exempting circumstance, only civil ra ang liable ka, but criminal wala. The same with justifying. Pero ang justifying, also the civil liability ang nawala. So both criminal and civil. Pero sa exempting, only criminal ang na-extinguished. Civil wala. So gidungag ang buang, well, the family of the buang will have to pay you for the damages you sustain. For culpa, the elements are similar. Naagya po'y freedom, naay intelligence, but walay intention. And the intention is replaced with carelessness or negligence. Nasabtan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, then we also have the so-called kaning mga the result is different from what you have intended. Will you be liable for the act you committed even if the result you intended to happen is different from what actually happened? Okay? Ang imong intention is different from the result. So, expectation versus reality. Like, in our exam a while ago, sa to, yang gipusil, and then yang gipusil si, example, Jose, and it turned out si Juan, ang napatay, si Alberto, no? Si Alberto ang napusilan. Kay mistaken identity. Kaluha da si Jose o si Alberto. Your intention was to kill Jose, but ang imong napusil si Alberto. Will you be liable for the death of Alberto? Can you say, I am not liable because there was no intention to kill? Exception ni siya. Okay? Ngayon siya matawag exception because initially, you had the evil motive already to commit a crime. From the very beginning, naka-intention nga mo patay og tawo. Nya di kay lahi ang napatay, manghinaw na ka, that's wrong. So for the result of your actuation, even if it's different, you would still be liable. But you expect a bit lower ang penalty because there was no intention to commit so grave a wrong over Alberto. Ang imong kalagot tuag yun ni Jose. So still, liable gyapon ka for the death of Alberto, but the penalty would be lowered depending on the mitigating circumstances available in that case. Okay. Naako ta gitawag og ang iyag yung gipatay unta si Jose. No? Like iyang gipusil si Jose. And then because he is not very familiar with how to use the gun, no? Okay. Ang iya din pusil di ay nga gigamit kinahanglang mo sa tawag ana kanang imong i-move gamay sa right kay imong straight sa tawo ang pusil dili siya mo straight og tira murag mo simang siya mapawala siya. So kung naa kay patyon dapat imong ihiwi gamay, no? So wa man siya kabaluan na. So what he did, he aimed the gun at Jose. Pero kay nahiwi man ang agi sa bala ang naigo si Melvin. Can he say, I am not liable for the death of Melvin? Akong patyon si Jose. Unya kay hiwi man na itong pusil, wala ko kalibutan ato. Is he correct? Can he argue on that way? What do you think? What do you think? He is wrong. Okay? He would still be liable. Katong ganina class, katong si Jose o si Alberto, muto kita tog mistake in the identity or error in personae. No? If there is an allegation of error in personae, you would still be liable. But we expect that there is a reduction of the penalty because there is a clear mitigating circumstance of there was no grave intention, there is no intention to commit so grave a wrong. With respect to Jose and Melvin, pagtiyo niya sa pusil, niya nihiwi man na itong bala, ang naigo si Melvin. Muna kita itong aberratio ictus or mistake in the blow. Alright? So even if there is mistake in the blow, you will still be held liable for the death of another person, even if ang imong intended person nga patyon is another person. So, under the elements of dolo, dili man siya mo considered as a crime or a felony because there was no intention to kill Melvin. But because, no, exception man because there was an intention to commit a crime at the beginning, like imagine iyang patyon si Jose. So there was already an evil mind at the very beginning. So he cannot escape any liability. Abi kay lahi ang naigo, manghinaw na siya, dili pwede. So he would still be liable. And the third is praeter intentionem. Kanang praeter intentionem class is, ang imong intention is just to push the person. Imo ra siyang itulod. But it so happened nga sa iyang kakuyaw, nahulog siya sa hagdan. And unknown to you, the person is pregnant. So naapasan. Will you be held liable for the death of the fetus or for the abortion suffered by the woman as well as the injury of the woman? Can you just say nga, wala mo ko intention nga patcho ng bata. Wala mo ko intention nga ihulog siya. Ako siyang gituklod kay galagot ng kunigod. Ako siyang gituklod na ba kay iya mo akong gituklod sa una. Can you do that? You cannot. Because of your action, even if your action is not illegal from the very beginning, kaya imagine na, ang imong intention is only to push her a little para pakuyawan. And it turned out na nahulog man noon. Still, you will be liable because the proximate cause of the woman's death or the woman's injury is your very act of pushing her. So, parang mga actions nato, even if it's not illegal, or even if it's not criminal, but it may result to a graver injury, or it may result to a crime, then you would be liable. That is praeter intentionem. Okay? We have mistake in the identity, error in personae. We have aberratio ictus, mistake in the blow. And then we have praeter intentionem, which is, the result is different from what you've intended, but you would still be liable. Because imong action ang sinugdanan. Alright. Okay, let's proceed. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. stages of crime. Okay? We have attempted, frustrated, and consummated. There's no problem with consummated, class, because if you talk about consummated, mission accomplished na siya. Like if you intended to kill a person, yan, napatay mo, that is consummated offense. Kung you were able to execute all the acts necessary for its commission, dahil yung nabuhi na yun siya because of the timely medical intervention, like, imo siyang gipusil, ha? And mapatagot siya because he was hit in a body part nga makapatay, mga mortal, mga mortal wounds, nasa kasing-kasing, nasa ulo, mapatay unta to siya. But because he was brought to the hospital immediately and he was attended to by medical doctors, muna nabuhi. Itag siya frustrated felony. Frustrated ba ibis patay munta tungod po ng doktor nabuhi. Okay? So all acts necessary to consummate the offense were already performed, but because of the timely intervention of the medical practitioners, nabuhi, frustrated. Ang attempted, dili tanan ng actions imong nabuhat. Nagsugod na kagbuhat sa mga acts necessary to consummate, but you were able to finish everything. Why? Nga wala nimo natiwas is because change of plan. Nga change of plan? Kay gaatang nakas-akas siya, kay mong ati imong kontra, imong gabon, ni ulan man. So, murag dili ni murag lisod kaayo ipadayon. Or tawo is tao kadaot, wala ni agi sa dalan. Kay absent sa work. Okay? Or sa palaid, maybe na ay mga pulis nga nagrunda or na ay mga barangay tanod. So there are circumstances beyond our control. That's why we were not able to push through with the consummation of the offense. Munang attempted. So whether it's attempted, liable gyapon ka. Frustrated, liable gyapon. Consummated, liable gyapon. Follow?
Sir, question sir. What is your record? Aning imo siyang posilon pero natiil na nimo siya sir. Asa siya mabutang sir? Sa attempted o sa frustrated?
Makapatay ba ang kuan?
What is it? Aning imo siyang gipostil siya sa katao dayong ang iyang ego tail sir or anang dili maka-fatal gud sa sa tao ba?
So it's not about murder, so it could not be attempted, it could not be frustrated, it could not be consummated. So, ma-follow siya as serious physical injury. You cannot say attempted because imo naman na-perform. All the acts of commission na-perform na nimo galing na tiil ra. So, dili siya ma-fall as murder. Okay? Anything else? But if you compare the three stages, mas higher ang penalty sa consummated. Like we talk about murder. Kung napatay nimo, that's reclusion perpetua. Kung frustrated raw, 1 degree lower, that's reclusion temporal. Kung attempted murder, that's only prison mayor. Kung homicide, if it's homicide, the maximum penalty is reclusion temporal. Kung frustrated homicide, it's prison mayor. And if it's attempted homicide, it's only prison correctional. So take note, ha? There is a corresponding penalty for every stage of commission. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
Now, there are three kinds also of categories of felony. We have grave felony, less grave felony, or light felony. So, light felonies, punishable by light penalties. Arresto menor. Sa mga light penalties, mga light felonies, mga sampalunganay, kawat o nangawat og dulce, nangawat og manok, inana. Mga ginagmay ra kayo. Then we have less grave felony, punishable by reclusion, arresto mayor and prison correctional. So medyo higher gamay. Like mga sumbagay, nana. Kawat og mga more than 5 pesos, okay. more than 500 pesos. Then we have grave felony, those punishable by prison mayor, temporal, and perpetua. So dito ni manggawas ni mga kidnapping, murder, homicide, rape, mga grave offenses. So as the crime or offense becomes graver, the penalty becomes higher also. Okay. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
All right. Now let's go to the different circumstances. Okay. So as I mentioned a while ago, na atay first circumstance is justifying. So remember, if the circumstance that you are alleging is justifying, so wala kay criminal liability and wala kay civil liability if the court will be convinced that it was indeed a justifying circumstance. Now, who will allege the existence of justifying circumstances? Isa may maninuod yun nga justifying circumstance ni ang biktima or ang akusado?
Akusado, sir.
Of course, because it's the accused who is interested in the acquittal. All right, very good. So of course, if you say self-defense ni siya, because self-defense is a justifying circumstance, of course, the complainant will also comment or object to that. Mo-argue good ang complainant nga dili ni siya justifying, dili ni siya self-defense because it failed to state the existence of the three elements. Kaya dapat man the three elements are present para mahimo siyang self-defense. In the absence of one, it becomes incomplete self-defense. So an incomplete self-defense is clearly not a self-defense. So incomplete self-defense is only a mitigating circumstance. Liable, but the penalty is lowered because of the mitigating circumstance. Okay, right. Let's go to justifying. The first act is self-defense. What is self-defense? Kasi self-defense is very difficult to prove in court. Imagine. Very difficult. Number one, you need to prove, okay, nga dili ikaw ang aggressor, dili ikaw ang isog, dili ikaw ang nanghagit, dili ikaw ang gauna-una. It should be the other person nga imong napatay. Because kung ikaw mao'y nanghagit niya, ikaw po'y napatay, kaya ning kanto, kisay isog. Dahil po tong usa, ako isog ko, nag-aaway na mo, imo siyang napatay. Liable ka. Because it is you who claims self-defense who is actually the unlawful aggressor. Nasabtan na to? So in order for self-defense to prosper, dapat limpyo ang kamot sa nag-defend. Dapat wala siya ng una. So that is unlawful aggression. Second element of self-defense is lack of sufficient provocation. Katong di ba kabante ka anang naay ga wild na niya, imo po siyang gipalagot. Sa isog ka, pati tayo ka-isog nimo, balay diri o dagan mi diri o sama ni ana. Meaning to say, you provoke him to commit the act. Mas imo siyang gipainit. Do you understand? Mo nang naabot mo sa point nga galayuganay na mo, kay imo man siyang gipalagot og samot. Na-touch iyang ego. So napugos siya og sukol nimo, and it turned out nga napatay nimo siya. So liable ka because absent ang second element, which is lack of sufficient provocation. Even if the unlawful aggressor was the one who was killed, but because you provoked him, so one element is lacking, liable ka. And the third is the means you employed in defending yourself, okay, is reasonable. So kung kutsilyo po ka, sundang, pusil. But if you can still run away, pwede, mas maayo run away ka. Because if the court finds out nga nagpaisog-isog yun ka, kaya bisag makadalagan ng ka because the other person is far away from you, imo gusto siyang gitagbo pag yun, you would be liable. Because the reasonableness of the means you employed could not justify the act. Nasabtan?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we have defense of relative. Okay. Sometimes, kaning atong relative na to, medyo naas sa situation nga posibleng mapatay. And then here comes kita, we saw them, we can actually render our help by defending our relatives. But it's not at all times nga tanang pag-defend sa relative would be considered as valid. Sometimes pwede pang ikaw ang masadaan. Sometimes ikaw pa ang mapriso because you failed to satisfy the existence of the three elements for a defense of relative. Number one, sa may elements sa defense of a relative. Okay, number one, unlawful aggression, dapat dili ikaw. Bahala pag kinsay aggressor ana, ang imo bang paryente, ang imo bang relative, o katubang iyang kontra. Basta dili ikaw ang unlawful aggressor. The one who defends, kanang gitawag to rescuer, should not be the one who employed the unlawful aggression. Second, the means you employed in defending the relative is reasonable. That's perfectly the same with self-defense. And the third is, okay, ang third requisite is, dapat ang nag-defend did not also provoke the person nga kontra sa imong relative. Do you follow? Defense of self-defense, dapat dili ikaw ang aggressor, dapat wala ka nag-provoke, and dapat reasonable imong gigamit ng means. Kung defense of a relative, dapat dili ka ang aggressor, dapat wala pug kaga-provoke. Sorry. Dili ikaw ang aggressor, reasonable ang means imong gigamit, o dili pud ikaw ang nag-provoke. No participation in the provocation. So more or less similar siya sa self-defense. Pero kisa man ng relatives class, dili tanang paryente relatives. Okay? Who are considered relatives? We have imong asawa is a relative. Like imong asawa, gikulata. So you may come to rescue her, but make sure you employ the elements of a valid defense of a relative. Ascendants, imong papa, mama, lolo, lola. Descendants, imong anak, imong apo. And legitimate, natural, or adopted brothers and sisters. And relatives within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity. Like imong first cousin, imong auntie, uncle, they are considered as your
Fourth degree.
relatives. Yeah, fourth degree of consanguinity.
Fourth degree.
Okay. So, what about defense of a stranger? So anybody not falling under defense of a relative is considered as a stranger. So imong girlfriend, di ba? Dili man siya relative, so ma-fall siya as stranger. Nga ano bang stranger? Nga kailan mo kasi imong uyab? Well, that's the law. If you want to question the law, you file the necessary petition in court. Nga i-name jud maayo ang stranger. So kay wa man nimo na nabuhat, we have no choice but to consider our boyfriends and girlfriends, our neighbors, or even our relatives nga dili mo fall sa within the fourth degree of consanguinity are considered as strangers na sila. Dili kato ning mga stranger nga wa kaila ha. So even if kaila ka, but they do not fall under the category nga relative, then you are considering them as stranger. Mga live-in partners, dili man na sila manag-asawa gyud, di ba? Because ang manag-asawa, it should be married. Nya kay di man mo minyo. So your live-in partner, even if you're living together for 3, 4, 5 years, would be treated as a stranger for purposes of defenses under justifying circumstance. So sa may kalahian sa defense of a stranger, nalagyan po ng unlawful aggression, dapat wala ka dapat dili ikaw ang aggressor, dapat ang imong gigamit ng means reasonable, and ang third, usually ang third element ra mo vary class katong lack of sufficient provocation. Sa self-defense, wala ka nag-provoke. Sa defense of relative, wala ka apil-apil o provoke. Kay basin o gaaway ng imong cousin o katong usang tawo ring apil-apil pug kala, kuha na siya, kuha na, malito na. Era kabla kay na may dream mo, tabag ra biniuron. Oh. You participate in the provocation, liable ka. But if you did not participate in the provocation, you just help your relative because relatives man mo. So, it would fall under defense of a relative. Ang stranger, dapat you should not be what do I call it one? You should not be induced by revenge, resentment, or other evil motive. Okay? So, kung when you defend a stranger, kinahanglang ni-defend ka out of humanitarian reason. Not because you were induced by revenge, kay galagot ka atong iyang kontra di ay. Okay? So, nataymingan nga nakita mo ron, imo pong gipatay itong usa. Ngayon mo kitabangan ang stranger, that's wrong. Okay? In order for defense of a relative, defense of a stranger to prosper, you must act voluntarily and in a humanitarian reason, and you should not be induced by revenge and evil motive. Okay. Next. Fulfillment of a duty, di ba? Like mga policeman, di ba? Na ay shoot to kill order. Oh. You are performing your duty. So no crime. Nya imo napatay, no crime. Like kanang mga doktor, di ba? Kanang mga doktor unya kanang mo'y nag-assist sa pagpanganak, di ba? Nya ang babae, nanganak ang babae, nahikapan ang iyang vagina. Mukiha day siya og kuan, acts of lasciviousness, kinahikapan iyang vagina. No? The doctor, like especially if ang doctor lalaki, the doctor is only fulfilling his duty. Oh. Kanang doctor pod, iyang gituli imong anak, imong bata, 5 years old. Yeah. Gituli, di ba? Nakadugo ng utin sa bata. Imong kiha child abuse ang doktor kay gipahid ana or mukiha kag serious physical injury? No. You were just acting in the fulfillment of your duty. And obedience of lawful order. Igura kang nituo sa lawful order coming from the superior. Okay. Next is exempting. Exempting. Ang pinaka-main aning exempting, mga minors. Okay? Sorry. Some of you might be using the revised penal code nga referensa. Take note that some provisions of the revised penal code were already amended. And kaning atoong provision on exempting circumstance, gi-amend na ning minority ani. The new law is 15 years old and below exempted. Wala na nang 9 years old, 12 years old, wala na na. Basta the person who committed the offense has the age of 15 and below. So in other words, 0 to 15 years old, walay sala. Automatic walay sala. Okay? Pero if today ka nag-birthday of 15, Today ka nag-birthday and then you are 15 years old and then you committed a crime, exempted ka. That's by virtue of Republic Act 9344 or the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act. Pagkaugma, di naman ka 15 years old pagkaugma, di ba? Pero naman imong edad ugma. Today ka nag-15. How old are you tomorrow?
16 na, sir.
Well, inuok ko. Karon pa ka nag-15 niya, ugma 16 na ka. Oh.
Still 15, sir.
15 na yata, sir.
No, specific age. Very good. 15 years old and 1 day. Sorry. So the law is very clear. 15 and below, exempted. Wa gyud sala, bahala pag gidunggab ka ikapila. Wa gyud sala na sila. Pero what is extinguished is only the criminal. Pero ang civil is still there. So nadunggaban ka, well, the family of the minor will have to pay for your medical expenses, damages. As compared to justifying, wala gyud kay sala, criminal and civil. Okay. So pagkaugma, you are no longer 15, but you are now 15 and 1 day. So dili naka-exempted, liable na mo. Okay? Samot nag-18 na ka, wala nang problema, liable na yun ka. And once you're 18 years old and you committed a crime, priso. Pero kung 15 and 1 day and below 18, liable gyapon ka, but you will not be sent to the prison. But you will be sent to mga youth facilities, mga DSWD facility, because they are considered children in conflict with the law. Mga CICL. And if you place them in the prison or in the jail, then it would be detrimental to the development of the child in conflict with the law. So paabuton sa nato nga mo 18 siya, usa i-transfer sa detention cell. But in the meantime, nag-hearing pa kasi ang kaso and he is still below 18, then he should be committed to youth detention facilities. Okay? And he will undergo mga certain programs that will improve him to become better individual in the future. Okay. Mga buang. Okay? Wala yung mga sala ng mga buang. Kato mga kleptomaniac, di ba? Mga kleptomaniac. Nangawat sila. Di na, wala siya sala. Kana mga patol.
Sakit naman nila, sir.
Oh, sakit man na. Kato mga gipatol, di ba? Like, say for example, gipatol ka. Unya, gatapad mo sa gipatol. Unya, pag kisi-kisi niya, natandog ka, nahulog ka sa pangpang. Wala sala ang wala sala tong gipatol kay you cannot control yourself. That's exempting. But of course, again, you have to pay for the damages sustained by the person. Okay? Then we have mitigating. Okay? Unsa man ang mga mitigating circumstances? Of course, mga voluntary surrender, minority could even be a mitigating circumstance, like minority nga kato mga 15 above 15 below 18, so dili maka-exempt ana for criminal liability, but you would consider that minority as mitigating circumstance para mugamay ang imuhong penalty. No intention to commit so grave a wrong, di ba? What I told you a while ago about aberratio ictus, about error in persone, pride intentionem, wala kayo kay intention nga mo commit og krimen. Although na kay intention gamay, pero dili gud ina kadako. So, well, the court considers that as something that would reduce the penalty should you be convicted. Because if you compare, because in a situation nga you planned to kill Juan, nga imong napatay si Juan, versus the second situation nga imong intention is to kill Juan, but it's Pedro ang imong naigo. As far as Pedro is concerned, wala jud kayo kay intention niya, di ba? So the penalty is lower compared to the first scenario. So liable, but you can avail of the mitigating circumstance of no intention to commit so grave a wrong. So dagan pa ni, we'll just go over passion or obfuscation, and mga extreme jealousy. Like say for example, you have a girlfriend, you have a boyfriend, and then here comes ang imong boyfriend giigat-igatan og babayi, or ang imong girlfriend giigat-igatag lang mga lalaki nya. Ikaw nga boyfriend or girlfriend, nangisog ka, nag-jealous ka, imong napatay, imong nasumbagan, or unsa ba? Liable, but mitigating circumstance of passion or obfuscation. Or pwede mga live-in partners, that's also applicable to them. Pero, if you are married, class, okay, mo siya nakalabi. Because if you are married, you are exempted also. But not the exempting circumstance nga itong discuss a while ago. But it's another kind of exempting. It's specific in the law. We have the death and physical injury under exceptional circumstances. So, if you saw your husband having sexual intercourse with another woman or your wife nga nagipaghalok og laing lalaki na imong napatay ang mga kabit, you will not be liable for the death. Okay? Ang imong krimen nga malayable ka is only death or physical injury under exceptional. Pero ang penalty is not imprisonment but only deschero, which is you will be allowed to go away to another place far from the place where the family of your wife and the family of the kabit are living to prevent mga kanang gitawag na to og rest back basig mobalos ang family. So it's actually a protection of the husband or the wife so that no further injury will happen. Okay. Natay uban, okay, voluntary surrender. Kanang voluntary surrender, class, it means nga ni surrender ka before ka ginako. Because nakabante kang gapadulong na ang pulis, kay dakpon ka, ni surrender ka, it's not voluntary anymore. It's surrender but not voluntary. So for you to avail of the mitigating circumstance of voluntary surrender, you must do it before the execution of the warrant of arrest. Plea of guilt, no, to a lower offense, that's also mitigating. Naaputay uban, class, nga hanap ang pananaw, nya gulang na, kagutom, nangawat ka og pan sa bake shop, bakery, kagigutom ka, that's mitigating, no? Poverty is mitigating. Then we have aggravating. Okay, take note of aggravating circumstance. The aggravating circumstance aggravates or increases the penalty of the accused. So, ang mitigating, take note, makapa-lower sa penalty, pero ang aggravating makapa-increase sa penalty. So, who will allege the aggravating? Isa may interested na ang accused will suffer the most serious penalty. It's the victim or the complainant. And kinsa man ang mo allege anang mitigating? Who is more interested in the reduction of penalty?
Accuser.
Okay, the accused will introduce mitigating circumstances. Then the victim also will introduce aggravating circumstance. So, pag sulod sa aggravating, taas ang penalty. Dapat kay mitigating, bubo ang penalty. Ano na siya? I-match-match na sa court ang aggravating and mitigating. So, what are examples of mitigating circumstances? Okay. Let's start, class, with kaning mga aggravating nga qualifying siya. What do you mean by qualifying? It will change the nature of the offense from homicide to murder. Di ba, matingala mo, kanus-ago na siya ma-homicide, kanus-ago na siya ma-murder. Ako, mangutana ko ninyo. When is the crime considered, when is killing considered homicide? When is the killing considered murder?
If all the elements are present, sir.
If all the elements are present. So what elements are you talking about? What elements are you talking about?
The murder, sir. Example, elements of murder, sir.
What do you mean?
Example, sir, ng elements of murder, sir. They...
Mogani, so what are these elements you're talking about?
Intention to kill.
Intention to kill, sa pa?
Plan.
Plan?
motive.
Dapat na ay patay, di ba? Okay, if there is no patay, there is no homicide or murder to speak of, di ba? And then, what else?
The accused killed him.
Yeah, the accused killed the person. So, actually, both homicide and murder, mura na ilang mga elements. Ang nakalahi sa murder is there are qualifying aggravating circumstances present. Like, unsa man ni? Number 1, evident premeditation. Okay? Evident premeditation. Excuse me for a while, class, ha? Kadal lang kayo, class. Okay, so evident premeditation meaning you planned it out. Kanang ano bang nakiplanong to kill him, nga imog yung giplanuhan like where to kill him, what weapon to use, when to kill him, yun ana. So kuan kaning that would make the offense nga homicide nga ma-change into murder. Do you follow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then next is treachery. Treachery. Treachery is an aggravating circumstance and it's also a qualifying aggravating circumstance. What is treachery? When you commit the offense, class, nga pagpatay, nga you are in a situation wherein the victim could not defend himself. That is treachery. Like example, gatalikod ang victim, imong gipusil. If you kill the person gatubang, that's only homicide. But if you kill the person while he is behind you, while you are behind him, is treachery. That is murder. Or gaatubangay mo, pero na ay abong sa inyong atubangan. Or na ay kurtina. He doesn't know you're there. But you knew he is there. Siya, wa siya kabalo nga naa ka. Imo siyang gipusil. That is treachery. Or gatakilid. Or wal gasakay siya og roller coaster. O saan niya na pag-defend nga, ni sakay mag roller coaster. Imo nang gipusil, makadalagan pa ba na? Cannot. That is treachery. Or gasakay og karabaw. Or gasakay og karabaw unya gakayot. No? Kuha ninyo? Gakayot, di ba? Oh. So how can he defend himself? So that's treachery. If that happens, it's murder. Or imo siyang gipatay during the kanang through the use of fire, imo gisunog, imo gisemento, imo gichap-chap, imo gikuag tinai, gikuag dalunggan. These are qualifying aggravating circumstances. Mahimo na siyang murder. Any question?
Okay mong gihilwaan, sir.
That is also murder. Imo siyang gipatay wal gakatulog. Or imo siyang gipatay during the occasion of a calamity. These are qualifying aggravating circumstances. Or ni-hire ka og tawo to kill him, mga gun for hire. Or nagmaskara ka, nagpa-disguise ka. Ginana. Or you availed of mga mga hypnosis nga imo siyang hypnotize. Yan na. So those are examples of qualifying aggravating circumstance. Any other question? Now, there are other aggravating circumstance nga dili maka-change sa nature of the offensa, like kanang mga abuse of superior strength, mga nighttime, mga sabihin ha, mga disregard of sex. Okay? So, basta present ang atong qualifying aggravating circumstances, ma-change na ang nature from homicide to murder. Okay. Any question with aggravating?
None so far, sir.
Not so far. So let's go to the next circumstance, the alternative circumstance. Alternative, there are three. Always remember na naara tay tulo ka alternative circumstances. And as the name suggests, when we say alternative, it could be this, it could be this. All right? Sometimes it's aggravating. Sometimes also it's mitigating. So naay mga instances nga aggravating, naapoy instances nga mitigating. So there are three alternative. We have relationship, intoxication, and degree of instruction. Let's start with relationship. If we talk about crimes against person, relationship is aggravating. Pero if we talk about crimes against property, relationship is mitigating. Example, imong gipatay imong anak. That's aggravating. Relationship aggravating. Okay? Imong gikawatan imong anak. Kay imong anak nakasweldo, yang giputang iyang pitaka sa lamisa, imong gikuaag 100. Liable ka? Liable.
Liable, sir, og kan sir atong nabalanaw sir na og mapanglitan gapuyo mo sa same roof dayong imong kapamilya, di ba dili nimo pwede makanta?
There are crimes nga crimes nga exempted by reason of relationship. Like we have malicious mischief, estafa, theft, ha? Provided nga you are living together kung brothers and sisters. Kung brothers and sisters mo, you should be living together. Pero kung papa or anak, even if you're not living together, pero kung imong gikawatan imong anak or imong gikawatan imong mama or papa, exempted ka, there is no crime. Okay? Pero kung robbery ang nahitabo, like naa sa drawer ang pitaka sa imong mama, nya imong gilungkab ang drawer, naguba ang drawer, naabri, that's robbery, liable ka. Do you follow? And because robbery is a crime against property, liable ka for robbery, but mitigating by reason of relationship. Do you follow? So ang relationship na to, class, na yung mga instances nga ma-aggravating siya, it increases the penalty. Naapoy mga times nga mitigating siya, ma-reduce ang penalty. And when does it happen? For relationship na aggravating, for crimes against person. Imagine kadugo mo nya imong gipatay or imong gi-rape or imong gisumbag. These are crimes against persons. So, liable, aggravated by relationship. Mitigated by relationship kung crimes against property like theft, robbery, walain, mga arson, okay. So take note ha, by reason of relationship, dili ka pwede makasuhan og theft, estafa, og malicious mischief. Pero kung brothers and sisters mo, na imong gikawatan siya sa iyang balay, it will not be exempting. Why? Because you are not living together. Pero kung living together mo, na imo siyang gikawatan, exempting. Okay? Pero kung robbery imong gibuhat, like ang piggy bank sa imong igsuon. You are living together, nya ang piggy bank nga iyang gitiguman, imong gikawat, gibuak. That's robbery. Anything that is anything na ay distraction, na ay paggamit ng mga false keys is robbery. So there is no exemption kung robbery atong gisdutan. Okay? Now what about intoxication? Kanang kahubog sa tawo. When is it aggravating? When is it mitigating? Kanang palahubog na kayo ka, sige jud kag inom, kabalo kang lain kag buot ug mahubog ka, di gyud ka mo tagam, that's aggravating. Pero kung mga first time or mga social drinker or murag katurag yun nahitabo tong inom ra gyud ka kay graduation or unsa ba, that is mitigating. Mga seldom mitigating na siya. Okay? So, if I am the complainant, I would have to prove na he is a habitual drinker. I will present sa mga complaints sa barangay nga gamaoy ni siya as proof nga he is a habitual drinker. Nya si accused po, he will prove that he is a social drinker. So, depende na sa court on how to appreciate the evidence. Now, next, degree of instruction or education. The more educated you are, especially og magtokag mga crimes, estafa, robbery, theft, higher ang penalty because aggravating na. Kaya imagine na, you are knowledgeable, nag-commit kag krimen. Pero itong mga illiterate, mitigating po na sa ilahon because wala man sila instruction or education. Any question with alternative circumstance?
None so far, sir.
Okay na ba? Nasabtan na ba?
So, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, let's proceed to Title 2, Persons Criminally Liable for Felonies. Who are the people liable for felony? Can you know, this is best explained if I will give you a situation. Like, Juan, maybe you can write down notes para mag-guide mo sa mga ngalan o kung sa ilang or what are their roles and participations in the story. So si Juan is actually eager to kill Pedro. So Juan o si Pedro ang kontra. But Juan doesn't want to kill Pedro kay malabi kang Juan. Mahadlok pud siya. So he hired si Peter. Then for hire mo si Peter. Okay. So, gasabot na sila. So, actually, Pedro is in Sumilon Island. Nagbakasyon si Pedro. Kunya, kay wala may available nga bangka or pump boat at night. May biyahe. So, ni-hire si Peter o pump boat. Nihulam siya ba? Nihulam siya o pump boat ni Alex. Okay. Si Alex. Kani si Juan, nihatag siya 1 million ni Peter. 1 million. As payment for killing Pedro. So he hired the pump boat of Alex. Wala ni kuig si Alex. Okay, yarang gihulman ang iyang giabangan ang pump boat. Kunya, si Peter doesn't want to go to Sumilon Island alone. So, yang gihangyo si Diego o si Melvin to go with him. Yan yung mga friends. So, yang giingnan nga, Melvin, tagaan mo og kwarta. So, ikaw, Melvin, aturo kas gawas, you will serve as a lookout. Kung na magani pulis maabot, sit-siti mi, para mugawas mi, okay? Then ikaw, Diego, you go with me inside the room of Pedro. You help me in killing Pedro. Ako'y mo patay, pero tabangi lang ko nga di siya maka-eskapo. So maybe you will hold his hands or imo siyang gapuson Inana, para I would be able to successfully kill him. Nakuha ninyo ang story?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Na kani si Juan is married. Married ni si sorry. Si Peter is married. Si Mary ang iyang asawa. Okay? So the day of killing arrives. So kisa may niadto sa Sumilon Island. Kisa nasa Sumilon Island?
Pedro.
Si Peter, sir.
Pedro ang patyon, correct? So Pedro is in Sumilon Island now. Kisa may niadto sa Sumilon Island para patyon si Pedro.
Si Jago, si Melvin.
O si
Peter.
Kisa ni
Silang tulo.
Peter
Si Peter was the gun for hire. Siya may gibayad 1 million para patyon si Pedro, si Peter. And then si Peter engaged the services of Jago and Melvin. Si Melvin will serve as lookout. Si Jago will serve as kauban yun ni Peter sa pagpatay. Although ang mupatay gyud, ang mo-execute gyud sa killing would be Peter. But Jago will just support Peter so that it would be easier for Peter to kill Pedro. You follow? And then who owns the bangka?
Alex, sir.
Alex. And then Peter is married, right?
Sir.
Okay,
Sir.
si Mary, yung wife. Dahil kasi itong misuhol ni Peter para patyon si Pedro?
Juan.
Sir.
Juan, very good. Okay, yes. Question? None?
Nandun.
Okay.
So, question.
Are there questions before I proceed?
No, sir.
None. Okay. So, Peter, Jago, and Melvin went to Apo Island. So, si Jago and Peter went inside the house of, went inside the room nga girentan. Resort maning Sumilon Island. Nga girenta ni Pedro. Melvin was just outside the room. He acted as a lookout. He will give the signal if na police, na tanod, na mga tawo, or what. Okay? So, ilang gipatay. Napatay gyud. So, gigapos ni Jago si Pedro. Dayon, gisumbag pa ni Juan. Dayon, gipatay. Napatay gyud si Pedro. So, immediately, Peter, Jago, and Melvin went home. Okay. So, si Peter, iyang gitagaan og maybe 10,000 si Alex for the use of the bangka. Iyang gitagaan ang wife og 100,000. Okay? Kana. So, what are the liabilities, the criminal liabilities of the people we mentioned? Unsa ilang mga sala? Kisa may naisala nila tanan, de?
Juan. Si Peter, sir.
Si Peter, ha?
Kaya siya may principal, sir. Na yung si Jago.
Tanan, sir. Si Juan,
Sila-
sir. Juan.
Sila tanan? Juan? Ito pa?
Juan, sir. Juan.
Nidawat na sila sa kwarta, sir.
Nidawat sa kwarta, okay. So, just to make the discussion short, sila tanan naisala. Okay? Sila tanan. But their degree of participation is different. Therefore, their penalties are different also. So, if we go with the hierarchy of penalty imposed, mas higher ang penalty ang i-impose sa principal. Taas ang principal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Next in line, ikaduwa, medyo mubo-ubo sa principal, ang accomplice. And then mubo pag yun sa accomplice ang accessory. So the accessory has a lower penalty compared to the accomplice. And the accomplice has a lower penalty pod compared to the principal. So ang principal gyud pinakadako og penalty. But at any rate, Whether you are an accessory, an accomplice, a principal, you are still criminally liable. Do you follow?
Sure.
Okay, very good. So, ang pangutana, kinsa may principal?
Si Peter, sir.
Sir, sir.
One.
One, sir.
Peter,
Juan,
Si Juan, dyan si Juan, si Juan, sir.
Juan ra?
Si Peter, sir. Siya may ni-paid ni
Peter.
Ni Jigo.
Okay. Now, class, there are three kinds of principal. Tulo ng principal. We have principal by direct participation. Mauni sila ang ni-execute sa action so that the crime will be accomplished or consummated. Now, among the people I mentioned who actively executed the act in killing Pedro.
Peter and Diego, sir.
Peter.
Are you sure with Diego? Si Diego mo nipatay?
Juan, sir, Juan.
Si Juan mo nipatay?
Patay.
Si Diego, sir. Hindi ba si...
Si Diego, igurang ni Gapos.
Pero si Jigo, sir, ang gakil si Juan.
Gab si Peter. So si
Ang
Peter
nila-
or kinsa mang gyud class?
Si Juan, sir.
The clue is who actively
Peter, sir.
executed the act of killing. Kinsa
Juan,
man patay?
sir. Peter, sir.
Nga mang Juan nga si Juan igor mang nibayad.
Si Peter, sir.
Si Peter, sir. Kaya si
Peter.
Ayan.
Peter is the principal by direct participation.
Yes, sir.
Nasabtan?
Yes, sir.
There
Yes,
may
sir.
be a lot of people in the crime scene, but take note og kinsa ang ni-execute yun sa act nga mo consummate sa offense nga giplano. Naiuban dira mga igorang mga nitabang mga supporting actors ug sa salida pa na mga supporting actress ug actors. Ang atong giburong diri ang main actor. So who is the main actor in the story? It is Peter.
Sir.
Okay. Si Jeg, the second kind of principal is what we call principal by indispensable cooperation. From the word itself, indispensable. Importante iyang participation because without his participation and cooperation, the principal by direct participation would not be able to accomplish his goal of killing. So kinsa man ang supporting actor nato in the story?
Jigo.
Diego.
Okay, Diego. Are we settled with Diego?
Sir, sir.
So si Diego is a principal by indispensable cooperation. Principal gyapon siya pero lahi silang ngalan. Pero whether lahi silang ngalan but because parehas lang principal, their penalty is the same. Kung si Peter is reclusion perpetua, si Diego is also reclusion perpetua. Do you follow? Okay, the third what do you call this one? Principal is principal by inducement. Kung saan man ang inducement class?
Induce ng buhatan ng
Induce, ba induce ka na bang gihaylo? Uy, buhatan ni Bi, taga-anti kaw kwarta. Kinsa man na?
Juan.
Okay, Juan is also a principal by inducement or by induction. Nasabtan?
Yes, sir.
So, Juan,
Yes, sir.
Peter, and Diego are all principal. Lain-lain na sila category pero puros na principal and their penalty is the same. They have the highest penalty kay principal. Now, Melvin here only acted as a lookout. He did not participate in the commission of the offense. He was not in the crime scene. He was just outside. But his participation is also important. So what's his participation? He is the accomplice. So accomplice, the penalty is 1 degree lower. So kung reclusion perpetua ang principal, siya reclusion temporal. Now, ang third nato nga mga artista, kani mga accessory. Alright? There are 3 kinds of accessory. Number 1 is kanang nitabang sa pag-escape. Okay? Number 2, kanang nilimpyo sa mga crime, sa mga evidence. Like mga kanang iyahong gilabhan ang sanina nga nagadugo, iyang gisunog ang patayng lawas, iyang gilubong, or iyang gihugasan ang kutsilyo. May kato mga nilimpyo sa mga evidence so that the evidence will not be discovered. Third is katong ni profit. Okay? Nakakwarta. Kay gitagaan. Alright. Now look at Mary. Asa nga category si Mary nga accessory?
Profit, sir.
She is an accessory katong ni profit. Okay?
Taganam sa kwarta.
Ana. Si katong si Alex nga tag-iya sa bangka is also an accessory because of the vehicle, because of the pump boat, it would
Pero
easy.
wala siya kabalo, sir, na ang puro
That is defense.
Victim naman siya.
Idea. Pero ang ato is we are discussing kung sa iyang pwede, but in the court it's up to him on how to defend himself. Okay? So pwede siya ma-accessory for helping in the escape or maybe for profiting. Hapak na po siya. And okay. So napatay usa ka accessory katong nitago sa mga evidence. Okay, although wala sa tuong mga lista, but at least you know. Okay? So accessory is 1 degree lower sa accomplice, so the penalty is prison mayor. So that's it. Question.
Pero ang ilang kaso tanan, sir, murder gyapon, sir.
Yes, murder ra gyapon. So ana ni siya People of the Philippines versus Juan, Peter, Diego, Melvin, Alex, and Mary. Ana rata. But their participation is different. Okay. Now let's go to penalties. What are the instances nga ma-extinguish ang criminal liability? Kanang mawala ang atong criminal liability. When will it happen? That's under Article 89 of the Revised Penal Code. Okay? We have
the question, sir.
Okay. What are the ways of extinguishing criminal liability? Di ba na found out naman ka nga guilty ka? So kanus mawala ang imong criminal liability? Pag mahuman na nimo serve ang sentence, sakto ba? Service of sentence, will that extinguish criminal liability? Like kuan ka, prison mayor. So after 6 years and 1 day, laya na ka. So would that extinguish criminal liability? Okay, so that's an example. But napoy mga times class nga without waiting for the termination or expiration of the service of sentence, the criminal liability would likewise be extinguished, like death of convict. Like namatay ang convict, kasama na, di wala na po siya sala. Di man na siya pwede mapasa sa iyang family. Kaya patay siya, sa lang iyang asawa mo'y prisuhon, dili po. Okay? And then, pardon. Kanang gipasaylo sa president. And the pardon class versus clemency. Okay, take note of that. When you say clemency, these are acts of forgiveness by the government, by the president. Acts of forgiveness, gipasaylo ka for political crimes. Like, also may mga political crimes. We have treason, insurrection, kudita, rebellion, subversion. These are political crimes. So, if you are accused of political crimes, Nya pasayloan ka sa government, clemency ang tawag ana. Pero kung non-political crimes like rape, murder, drugs, inana, pasayloan ka sa president, we call it pardon. So para ma-extinguish totally ang criminal liability, the pardon must be absolute. Kaya na may usahay, gipasaylo ka but na ay mga kondisyones na dapat wala kay reklamo, wala mo reklamo nimo sa barangay, dapat mo report kaskuan, dapat manilhi kaskuan. Ina ba na mga kondisyon? Because if you violate the condition, like yun ang president nga, dapat din ka mo inom, di ka mo sigarilyo. Niinom ka, so you violated the condition. So balik ka sulod. So the pardon there does not extinguish criminal liability, but it only extinguished partially. Muna, if we want a total extinction of criminal liability, dapat ang pardon is absolute. Do you follow?
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Then we have prescription of crimes. Kita class, kitagaan ta og mga period, no? Number of months or years within which to file a case. After the lapse of time, you cannot file anymore the case against the accused. Like say for example, for crimes punishable by death, reclusion perpetua, and reclusion temporal, you are given 20 years to file the case. So kung imo siyang napatay today is 2021, March 20, 2021, you are given until March 19, 2041. Sakto ba? Basta 20 years, you are given 20 years to file a case. After 20 years, you cannot file a case anymore. Nasabtan? So, after 20 years, ni-prescribe na ang crime. So, prescription of crime is also a mode of extinguishing criminal liability. Katong mga punishable by reclusion, prison mayor will prescribe in 15 years. Libel, 1 year. Physical injury, 2 months. Libel, oral defamation, slander, 6 months. Natin mga period, take note of that. So, after the lapse of time, then you could no longer file a case. The period class is counted from the knowledge of the victim, or kung napatay man ang victim, the knowledge of the law enforcement authorities. Like say for example, let's say for example, ang patayng lawas ni Pedro wala na discover kay gisemento. Na discover ang iyang lawas year 2045. Wala po siya family, so wala maka-report nga nawala siya, di ba? Bakit ito na family kay i-report nga loss? Wala man. So wag ko'y alimuwag ang katawan. Even the police officers, wala ay idea nga a certain Pedro has gone away. If not with a group of people nga namoy nakakali, dito na-discover nga naay patayng lawas. And it was discovered nga siya si Pedro. Now, has the crime prescribed already? 2045 naman, atong sabot, March 19, 2041 kutob. Has the crime prescribed already? Yes or no? The answer is no.
No, sir.
No. As I said, that the period starts to run from the discovery, from knowledge of the victim or knowledge of the law enforcement authorities. So, ang knowledge of the victim, will it apply Patay naman siya. So, pa na pagkuan report niya. So, dili na mo apply ang knowledge of the victim. But ang mo apply is knowledge of the law enforcement authorities. And when did the law enforcement authorities obtain knowledge as to the commission of the offense? When? Only in 1945. So, they are given until 1965. I'm sorry, 2045 to 2045. The police officers are given until 2065 within which to file a case. So here comes si Juan, si Peter, niyan sila nga, ay mugawas na ta, kay katago-tago man ni sila for 20 years, mugawas na ta, kay 2045 dabita, walay kaso. Are they correct? They're not correct because they can still be prosecuted because the prescription has not yet started. Okay. Then we have marriage of the victim and the accused. In rape cases, di ba? Magminyo, what is there to prosecute na? In multiple rape, like gang rape, ang nang-rape niya 5, dili po pwede ang 5 mo marry sa victim. Dili po pwede mo pugos ang accused. No? The victim will have to choose kasi ang pilion. Katong pinakagwapo. Okay? So katong napilian will be saved. No? Because ma-extinguish ang criminal liability. So katong nabilin will have to face trial.
Down.
Then we have, okay. All right. Then we have partial extinction of criminal liability. Katong ganina is total, this time is partial. We have conditional pardon. Okay? Conditional pardon is partial extinction. Commutation of sentence, kanang imubo ang sentence from reclusion perpetua to reclusion temporal. Kanang mga good conduct allowances, like you have a good behavior in jail. So pwede ka maka-reduce sa imuhong service, but it's just partial. Parole and probation, these are partial extinction. Okay, now I already gave you the duration of the penalty, no? Take note of that because it's very important. We have arresto minor, arresto mayor, prison correctional, prison mayor, reclusion temporal, and then we have reclusion perpetua. Then we also have life imprisonment. Life imprisonment is only applicable to special penal laws. What are examples of special penal laws? We have the Dangerous Drugs Act, the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act, Violence Against Women, Child Abuse Law, Harassment Act, mga Human Security Act, mga Human Trafficking in Persons Act, okay, mga anti-gambling. So these are special penal laws. Kani mga special penal laws, these are new laws nga which were not included in the revised penal code. Naapoy uban nga gi-amend ang revised penal code, that's why it becomes special penal laws. Like ang rape. Ang rape was amended. Under the new rape law, the Republic Act 8353, which took effect on October 22, 1997, gi-change na ang mode of commission sa rape. Nanay na appeal nga rape through sexual assault. Sa una kay rape by sexual intercourse naman na, there's only one kind of rape, di ba? The woman's vagina, then gi-insert ang penis sa lalaki, there was a push and pull movement. That's the traditional kind of rape. But under the new rape law, natay gi-include nga rape through sexual assault, like insertion of the penis to the anus, to the mouth. Okay, That's rape already. Or insertion of the finger to the vagina, or insertion of the object to the anus, to the vagina, like. So these are examples of mga acts that would constitute a crime of rape under the new law. So you cannot find that in the revised penal code. But since it was amended and under the new law, na siya gi-appeal nga additional act, so mahimo na siyang special penal laws. So the maximum penalty nga mahatag sa special penal law, nga mahatag sa offense, punishable by special penal laws is life imprisonment. That's actually habang buhay na pagkabilanggo. Reclusion perpetua is not habang buhay. It's only 20 years and 1 day to 40 years. Okay? Are there questions with penalties?
Sir,
yes.
Galing sa duration of penalties ba sir? Galing sa last galing sir, kayong threefold rule. Unsay pasabot kami niya sir?
Kanang sa threefold rule, katumagod nang if you are committing several offenses simultaneously, dili ka pwedeng mag-penalize ka kada usa ka kaso. So natay maximum nga penalty if in the event nga you committed several offenses nya puro ka convicted. Okay, natay threefold rule. So actually it's the court that will provide for that. So like even kami we don't dwell so much with the computation of the penalty because that is the duty of the judge to compute the penalty. Ang ato lang is we have to be aware of what are the penalties, the duration, and what else? Other questions? Okay. If there's not, I'll just reserve na lang the questions para mahuman sa ako sa discussion tanan, then you can ask me later. I have to make sure I'll be able to discuss everything, mga major points, and then we'll have the pre-test again, and make sure you would be able to increase your scores. For those who were not able to answer a while ago, make sure your scores are higher. Your scores are high because I already discussed the questions. Okay, and let's talk about rape day. Since we are talking about rape day ganina. Na mga times class nga the commission of rape is impossible. So even if there is an inherent impossibility of committing the crime of rape, you cannot say that there was no crime of rape committed because we have this so-called impossible crime of rape. Like you rape a woman. There's a woman, you were not aware that she was already dead hours before. So pag rape nimo niya, pag imo siyang gi-rape, wa kablo patay siya. So imo gi-insert ang imong iya, wala po siyang ni pala kay patay na beto. Gato kag natulog siya. So you inserted your penis, you did a pull push movement, nana. So nagawsan ka, lipay ka, gawas ka. Was there a crime committed? Yes, there was. It's not rape. It's not attempted rape. It's not frustrated rape, but it's impossible crime of rape. The same with murder. Like kabalo kang Juan is sleeping in that room. So during that time, gato ka nga na si Juan dito gahigda. Imong gilabayag granada, imong gi machine gun iyang kwarto. Mapatay gyud ka class. Sa kisang tawanan na dito so mapatay gyud. But he was not killed. Why? Because he was not there. He was a cafe racer. Is there a crime of murder? Well, dili siya murder. Kaya may napatay. Di ba? Is it attempted murder? Wala po because wala may tao mapatay dito. It could be impossible crime of murder. Or ganang kag maniguro gyud ka, well, malicious mischief guro or arson. Kaya mong gipabuthan ang kwarto ni Juan. Okay? So, but the penalty of the impossible crime is very, very low compared to attempted or even attempted. Okay? So, we're basically done with dolo. Okay? So, ang remaining topic na to is culpa. So, ang pinaka-common dito ng culpa class is reckless imprudence resulting to homicide, resulting to damage to property. So, walay reckless imprudence resulting in murder, ha? Walay crime ngayon, ana. Because ang murder is very strict, there should be intention. Okay. And, generic na ng homicide. Even sa mga special complex crimes class, like say for example, your first intention is to rob the house. Pag rob nimo sa house, kita ka nga nay mga babaeng gwapa nga anak inyong gi-rape. Dayon, after which inyong gipatay. What crimes were committed or what crime is committed?
Rape with homicide, sir.
Rape with homicide.
Yes, sir.
Nga namang rape with homicide, ang unang intention ba is rape?
Yes, sir. Gi-rape tayo sa gipatay man.
As I mentioned, ang ilang plano is mang-rob, mangawat.
Robbery with homicide.
Robbery with homicide? Yan, rape?
Robbery with homicide, sir.
Ang rape?
Kuan, maybe, sir, kuan, ang ilang purpose man kay mo rape ay mo mangawat raman sila. So, attempted with homicide yung tayong kaso ang rape.
Attempted with homicide. Now, class,
attempted with homicide, kanang robbery with homicide, yung another kaso ang rape, sir.
Yung ano bang other kaso man nga related na sila? Same event, same parties, same time?
Excuse me, sir. Di siguro masulad ang threefold rule, sir.
Kay threefold rule? No?
Tulo man siya kakaso, sir, ding
Dili. There's only one case. There's no three cases in that situation. There's only one case. Kanang threefold rule, nangawat ka ron, dayon, nakapiyansa ka, napatay na po ka. Yan na ba? So, dayan kang kaso. There's only one offense committed. It's complex. And ang complex is duwa ra gyud ka krimen nga tuong ibutang. Duwa ka act. Okay? And we cannot ang sa atong priority is kuanta siya kaning robbery ang pinakauna, dayong rape. Ang homicide will just be an aggravating circumstance. Do you understand? Aggravating ra ang homicide. So it's robbery with rape aggravated by homicide. You understand?
Bali, duwa yung kaso, sir.
Usa ra yung kaso. Robbery with rape lagyon. Robbery with rape. Nya aggravated siya sa homicide.
Sir, ang complex crime niya nagibuhat.
Dili. Ang makap-aggravate niya kay naa pa ikatulo nga homicide. Do you follow? Robbery with rape niya, aggravating circumstance niya, homicide. So, homicide there is just an aggravating circumstance. So, take note of that. Now, let's go back to reckless imprudence. So, wala tay reckless imprudence resulting in murder. It's only homicide. It's generic. So, reckless imprudence resulting in homicide and damage to property, or reckless imprudence resulting to damage to property. And then, mas gamay ang penalty because it's only culpa. There is no, ganun gamay ang penalty, ganun culpa because there was no intention to commit a crime. Although there were intelligence, there were freedom, but there was no intention. There was only carelessness as a third element of culpa. Okay? Nasabtan? Sige, I'll give you 5 minutes to ask questions. Then exactly 11:30, we will start with a pre-test again. You have to be very honest with your scores, ha? And then you compare your answers later on because the questions were already discussed. Okay. So I'll give you 5 minutes to ask questions.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
What are the kinds of rape, sir?
Kinds of rape. We have rape by sexual intercourse and rape through sexual assault. Sa rape by sexual intercourse, ang victim is always a girl. Ang accused is always a boy. Pero sa rape through sexual assault, that's the second way of committing rape. Ang victim may be a woman, maybe a man. Ang accused may be a woman, maybe a man. Kaya pwede man nga ang man there was anal sex, no, sa duha ka lalaki. So posible victim lalaki, accused lalaki. Pwede po ang babayi iyang gi-insert ang baseball bat sa ano sa lalaki. So victim lalaki, accused babayi. Okay? So pwede. Because ang rape through sexual assault is insertion of the penis to the anus of a man or a woman, or to the mouth of a man or a woman, or insertion of the object to the vagina and to the anus, to the vagina of a woman and anus of the man or a woman, or inserting of the finger to the woman, it's vagina. So it could be man or woman ang victim, or man ang accused. Any question? Anything else?
Thank you, sir.
No more questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, we will have the pretest again. So prepare your pen and paper. Can you see my screen?
Di maklaro, sir.
Ano? Klaro na?
Okay na, sir. Okay na.
Okay, let's start. Number 1. It is that branch or division of law which defines crimes, treats of their nature, and provides for their punishment. A. Civil law. B. Civil procedure. C. Revised Penal Code. D. Criminal law. Number 2. It is an act committed or omitted in violation of a public law forbidding or commanding it. A. Dolo. B. Culpa. C. Felony. Number 3. It means deceit. A. Dolo. B. Culpa. C. Felony. D. Offense. Number 4. It means fault. Dolo. B. Culpa. C. Felony. D. Offense. Number 5. It is one which makes criminal an act done before the passage of the law, and which was innocent when done, and punishes such an act. A. Ex post facto law. B. Bill of Attainder. C. Criminal law. D. Revised Penal Code. Number 6. It is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without trial. A. Ex post facto law. B. Bill of Attainder. C. Criminal law. D. Revised Penal Code. Seven. When a new law is passed which carries a stiffer penalty, it should be applied A. Prospectively. B. Retroactively. Number 8. When a new law is passed which is beneficial to the accused, it should be applied A. Prospectively. B. Retroactively. Nine. What does nullum crimen nulla poena sine lehi stand for? A. An act done against my will is not my act. B. There is no crime when there is no law punishing it. C. Falsity in one is falsity in all. D. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. Number 10. What does ignorantia legis non excusat stand for? A. An act done against my will is not my act. B. There is no crime when there is no law punishing it. C. Falsity in one is falsity in all. D. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. 11. Error in personae is also known as A. Mistake in the identity. B. Mistake in the blow. C. Mistake of fact. D. Reckless imprudence. Twelve. Aberratio ictus is also known as mistake in the identity. B. Mistake in the blow. C. Mistake of fact. D. Reckless imprudence. 13. Juan intended to rape Maria. While he was raping Maria, it was unknown to him that Maria died already hours ago due to heart attack. What crime was committed, if there was any? A. Rape. B. Acts of lasciviousness. C. Impossible crime of rape. D. Attempted rape. 14. Select the two means of committing a felony. A. Intelligence. B. Dolo. C. Intent. D. Culpa.
Please repeat the question, sir.
Number 14. Select the two means of committing a felony. A. Intelligence. B. Dolo. C. Intent. D. Culpa. 15. The following are characteristics of criminal law except A. Retroactive, B. Prospective, C. Territorial, D. General. 16. The following are requisites of dolo except A. Intent, B. Freedom, C. Intelligence, C. Negligence, D. Intelligence. Again, the following are requisites of dolo except A. Intent, B. Freedom, C. Negligence, D. Intelligence. 17. Mistake of fact is a justifying circumstance. Hence, there is no criminal liability and civil liability. A. True, B. False. There are only two options there. A. True, B. False. 18. Juan intended to kill Diego but erroneously killed Manuel. Juan is not liable for the death of Manuel as he had no intention of killing him. A. True, B. False. '19. Juan intended to shoot Diego with his gun but erroneously hit Manuel due to lack of skill or foresight. Juan is criminally liable for the death of Manuel. A. True, B. False. Last number. The date when the revised penal code took effect under Article 1 of the said code. A. January 1, 1922. B. January 1, 1932. C. January 1, 1942. And D. January 1, 1952.
Sir, pwede ka mamutana atong sa sponsor number 6. Sir, kaya wala ko klaro kay sponsor sa iyang choices.
Number 6. It is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without trial.
Kung sa tayo, ang gani sir, ating sa number 20 sir.
Okay to sa number 6, okay. Number 20. Number 20's choices are A. January 1, 1922, B. January 1, 1932, C. January 1, 1942, and D. January 1, 1952.
Sir, balik sa no paliw ang 12, sir. 12.
12.
Yes, sir.
Aberratio ictus is also known as A. Mistake in the identity, B. Mistake in the blow, C. Mistake of fact, D. Reckless imprudence. Okay,
Yes, sir. Salamat,
so
sir.
let's check your answers. Please, son, don't manipulate your answers. So please check honestly. Okay, number 1. I'll just give the answers that you want and I will explain later. Number 1 is D, dog. Number 1, dog. Number 2, cat. Number 3, apple. Number 4, boy. Number 5, apple. Number 6, boy. Number 7, apple. Number 8, boy. Number 9, boy. Number 10, dog. Number 11, apple. Number 12, boy. Number 13, cat. Number 14, 2 answers. We have boy and dog.
Doang check, sir.
Dua ang check. 15, apple. 16, 17. Apple. 18. Boy. 19. Apple. 20. Boy. Okay, please submit your answers or your scores to the group chat. By the way, so that I will not be scrolling your messages, please, in one message na lang your first score and second score so that I would know the comparison or the improvement if there is.
Asa na ipasa sir? Sa GC sir?
Dili ka sa chat sa Google Meet.
Google Meet. Asa man ani?
Sayop ng negosyo sa kuha sir, ang sponsor.
Nasubmit na? Tanan?
Wala ka sir, wait sa sir. Gakuan pas credo sa iya sir. 18 over 21. Mas bericut. Bandung. Tara. Kenapa? Masih nila. Tara. Okay na sir,
Okay now, Credo 15 to 18, very good. Palmares 11